Change is the only constant in life. These words, often attributed to the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus, echo a fundamental truth recognized by the Stoics. The Stoics believed that life is in a constant state of flux, and it is this impermanence that defines our existence. To truly understand the art of letting go, one must first embrace the nature of impermanence. Nothing in life is permanent. Relationships, possessions, even our own identities are all subject to change. The Stoics saw this as neither good nor bad, but simply as the way of the world. Consider the passage of time. It flows ceaselessly, never pausing for anyone or anything. Each moment that passes is gone forever, replaced by the next and then the next. We age, we grow, we evolve. The people around us change, situations shift, and the world itself is in a constant state of transformation. The Stoics urged us to accept this reality, not to resist it. Resistance to change only leads to suffering. When we cling to what is, refusing to accept what will be, we create our own misery. But when we embrace the impermanence of life, we find a deeper peace within ourselves. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that we should view everything in life as borrowed. Our relationships, our possessions, even our very lives are not truly ours. They are gifts from the universe, temporary and fleeting. When we understand this, we begin to see that holding on too tightly to anything is futile. Imagine holding sand in your hand. The tighter you grasp, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you hold it lightly with an open hand, the sand remains. Life is much the same. When we hold on too tightly, we lose what we are trying to keep. But when we let go, we can fully appreciate the beauty of the moment. Letting go doesn't mean that we should be indifferent or detached in a way that diminishes our human experiences. Rather, it means recognizing the natural flow of life and not becoming overly attached to any particular outcome. It's about finding balance, caring deeply but not clinging, loving fully but not possessing, living passionately but not fearing change. The Stoics believed in the concept of amor fati, or love of fate. This means loving and embracing everything that happens in life, whether we perceive it as good or bad. When we love our fate, we let go of the need to control every aspect of our lives. We understand that change is inevitable, and we welcome it as an essential part of our journey. Think of a river. It flows, bends, and changes course naturally. If we were to try to stop it, we would be fighting against nature itself. But if we go with the flow, we can move effortlessly along with it. Life, like the river, is meant to be experienced in flow. We cannot stop time, halt change, or prevent the natural course of events. But we can learn to move with them, to adapt, and to find peace in the journey. In understanding impermanence, we learn that nothing is truly lost. Everything is part of the ever-changing fabric of the universe. When something or someone leaves our lives, it is not an ending but a transformation. It's an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to experience life in new ways. The art of letting go begins with this understanding. When we accept the transient nature of life, we free ourselves from the chains of attachment. We open ourselves to the fullness of each moment, living with a sense of peace and harmony that comes from knowing that change is not our enemy, but our companion on the path of life. Number 2. In our modern world, it is easy to equate success and happiness with the accumulation of material possessions. We are bombarded with messages that tell us more is better, more money, more possessions, more status. Yet the Stoics, wise in their understanding of human nature, warned against this very pursuit. They believed that true contentment and freedom come not from what we own, but from detachment from material things. Imagine a life where your happiness does not depend on the car you drive, the house you live in, or the clothes you wear. A life where your sense of self-worth is not tied to your bank account or the possessions you accumulate. This is the life the Stoics envisioned, a life of inner peace, free from the chains of materialism. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote extensively about wealth and possessions. He argued that the pursuit of wealth often leads to a never-ending cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. The more we have, the more we want. This, is the trap of materialism, a trap that can never be fully satisfied. But when we detach ourselves from the need for material wealth, we find that we already have enough. Seneca reminded us that true wealth is not measured by what we possess, but by how little we need. The person who needs little is truly rich, because they are not enslaved by their desires. This is not to say that we should renounce all material possessions, but rather that we should cultivate a mindset of detachment, recognizing that material things are not the source of true happiness. Consider the ancient Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort. Stoics would intentionally expose themselves to discomfort or deprivation, sleeping on the floor, wearing simple clothing, or fasting for a day. The purpose was to remind themselves that they could live happily without the luxuries they were accustomed to. It was a way of training the mind to be resilient, to be content with less, and to not fear losing what they had. This practice can be applied in our own lives. By occasionally stepping back from the comforts and luxuries we enjoy, we can remind ourselves that our happiness does not depend on them. We can learn to appreciate the simple things, to find joy in experiences rather than possessions, and to cultivate a sense of gratitude for what we have. Epictetus, another great Stoic thinker, taught that the things we own are not truly ours. They are merely on loan from the universe, and they can be taken away at any moment. When we understand this, we begin to see that attachment to material possessions is futile. It is not the possessions themselves that cause us pain, but our attachment to them. When we let go of that attachment, we free ourselves from fear and anxiety. The Stoics believed that our true wealth lies within, our character, our wisdom, our virtues. These are the things that cannot be taken away from us. They are the only true possessions, and they are far more valuable than any material wealth. When we focus on cultivating these inner riches, we find a sense of contentment and fulfillment that no amount of money can buy. Detachment from material possessions does not mean living in poverty or renouncing all worldly goods. It means understanding that material things are impermanent, that they do not define us, and that they should not be the focus of our lives. It means finding joy in simplicity, in experiences, in relationships, and in the cultivation of our inner selves. As we practice detachment, we may find that we actually enjoy our possessions more. When we are not dependent on them for our happiness, we can appreciate them for what they are: useful tools, beautiful objects, or enjoyable luxuries. But we do not cling to them. We are not afraid of losing them because we know that our true happiness comes from within. In detachment, we find freedom. We are no longer bound by the endless pursuit of more. We are no longer defined by what we own. Instead, we are free to live a life of purpose, of meaning, and of true contentment. Chapter 3, Letting Go of Expectations. And number 3, expectations are the silent architects of our disappointments. They shape how we see the world, how we interact with others, and how we experience life's events. Yet, as the Stoics understood, clinging to expectations is a sure path to unhappiness. To live a truly peaceful life, we must learn to let go of our expectations and embrace the reality of the present moment. The Stoics believed that our suffering often comes not from the events themselves, but from our expectations of how things should be. When reality does not align with our expectations, we feel disappointment, frustration, or even anger. But these emotions are not caused by the external world. They are the result of our own minds. Consider the story of a traveler who expects a sunny day for his journey. If the day turns out to be rainy, he may feel annoyed or upset. But the rain itself is not the problem. It is his expectation of sunshine that causes his suffering. If he had no expectation, or if he accepted the possibility of rain, he could enjoy the journey regardless of the weather. This is the essence of Stoic thought, to accept the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. When we let go of expectations, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil that comes from unmet desires. We learn to embrace whatever life brings, knowing that each moment is an opportunity for growth and understanding. Epictetus taught that we should focus on what is within our control and let go of what is not. Our expectations often involve things beyond our control. other people's actions, the outcomes of our efforts, or the twists of fate. By clinging to these expectations, we set ourselves up for disappointment. But when we release them, we find peace. Letting go of expectations does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means approaching life with a sense of openness and curiosity, rather than a rigid set of demands. It means doing our best in any situation, but without insisting on a particular outcome. It means accepting that life is unpredictable, and that this unpredictability is part of what makes it beautiful. The Stoics used the metaphor of the archer to illustrate this point. An archer can aim carefully, draw the bow with skill, and release the arrow with precision. But once the arrow is in flight, its path is beyond the archer's control. The wind may blow it off course, or the target may move. The archer's task is to focus on the process, not the outcome. In the same way, we should focus on our actions and intentions, not on the results. When we let go of expectations, we also open ourselves to new possibilities. Often, our expectations limit us, blinding us to opportunities that do not fit our preconceived ideas. By releasing these expectations, we become more flexible, more adaptable, and more capable of finding joy in unexpected places. Think of a child at play. Children approach the world with a sense of wonder, without rigid expectations. They are open to whatever comes their way, and they find joy in the simplest things. As adults, we can learn from this mindset. By letting go of our expectations, we can rediscover that sense of wonder and find contentment in the present moment. The Stoics remind us that life is not about achieving a specific outcome, but about living in accordance with our values and principles. When we let go of expectations, we align ourselves with this deeper purpose. We become less concerned with what others think, with external success, or with reaching a particular destination. Instead, we focus on the journey itself, on being present, and on acting with integrity. In letting go of expectations, we find a profound sense of freedom. We are no longer bound by the need for things to be a certain way. We are free to experience life as it is, to accept whatever comes with grace and equanimity. We are free to live fully, without the burden of unmet desires weighing us down. Number 4, emotions are powerful forces within us. They can uplift us, inspire us, and connect us with others. But when our emotions become attachments, when we cling to them and allow them to dominate our thoughts and actions, they can lead to suffering. The Stoics understood this well, and they taught the importance of overcoming emotional attachments to achieve true peace and freedom. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the idea that our emotions are not inherently good or bad. Rather, it is our attachment to these emotions that can create problems. When we allow emotions like anger, jealousy, or fear to take control, we lose our sense of inner calm and become slaves to our passions. Imagine a person who becomes consumed with anger whenever things don't go their way. This anger, unchecked, can lead to destructive actions and strained relationships. But more than that, it creates a state of inner turmoil. The person becomes trapped in a cycle of anger and frustration, unable to find peace. The Stoics taught that we should observe our emotions without becoming attached to them. Emotions, like thoughts, come and go. They are transient and impermanent. When we understand this, we can learn to experience our emotions without being overwhelmed by them. We can acknowledge our feelings without letting them control us. One of the key practices in Stoicism is the concept of apatheia, often misunderstood as apathy. Apatheia is not about becoming emotionless or indifferent. Rather, it is about achieving a state of equanimity where we are not disturbed by irrational emotions. It is about finding a balance where we can feel emotions deeply, but not be enslaved by them. Think of the ocean. On the surface, the waves may be turbulent, tossed about by the wind. But deep below, the waters are calm and undisturbed. In the same way, we can cultivate a deep inner calm that remains steady, even when our surface emotions are in turmoil. The Stoics believed that by practicing mindfulness and self-awareness, we can learn to observe our emotions without becoming attached to them. When we notice ourselves becoming angry, jealous, or fearful, we can take a step back and ask, why am I feeling this way? Is this emotion based on something within my control, or is it a reaction to something outside of my control? By asking these questions, we begin to see that many of our emotional attachments are based on misunderstandings or unrealistic expectations. We become attached to how we think things should be, rather than accepting them as they are. This attachment creates a gap between reality and our desires, and it is within this gap that suffering arises. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." These words remind us that our emotional attachments are within our control. We can choose how we respond to external events, and by doing so, we can free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. Overcoming emotional attachments also involves letting go of the need for validation from others. Many of our emotional attachments are tied to how we want others to see us or how we want to be perceived. We become attached to the approval of others, to their praise or to their love. But the Stoics taught that true contentment comes from within, not from external sources. When we release the need for external validation, we find a deeper sense of self-worth. We become more resilient, more self-reliant, and less vulnerable to the fluctuations of others' opinions. We learn to value ourselves for who we are, not for how others see us. The Stoics also emphasize the importance of focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we cannot. Our emotions are often tied to things beyond our control, other people's actions, the past, or the future. By focusing on the present moment and on what we can influence, we can reduce our emotional attachments and find greater peace. In overcoming emotional attachments, we do not become cold or detached. Rather, we become more compassionate, more understanding, and more present. We learn to love others without possessing them, to care deeply without clinging, and to live fully without fear of loss. As we practice overcoming emotional attachments, we cultivate a state of inner freedom. We are no longer bound by our emotions. Instead, we can experience them fully without being controlled by them. We find a sense of peace and clarity that allows us to navigate life's challenges with grace and wisdom. Loss and grief are among the most profound and challenging experiences we face in life. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, a relationship, or a cherished dream, the pain of loss can feel overwhelming. Yet, the Stoics offered a path to acceptance, teaching that while grief is a natural response to loss, it is through understanding and embracing the nature of loss that we find peace. The Stoics recognized that loss is an inevitable part of life. Everything we hold dear, our possessions, our relationships, even our own lives, will one day come to an end. This is the reality of existence, and no amount of wishing or resisting can change it. The Stoics urged us to confront this truth head-on, to accept the impermanence of all things, and to find strength in this acceptance. When we experience loss, it is natural to feel grief. Grief is a reflection of our love, our attachment, and our humanity. But the Stoics believed that while we should allow ourselves to feel grief, we should also strive to keep it within bounds. Grief, when left unchecked, can consume us, leading to despair and a loss of perspective. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote extensively about grief, advising that we should neither suppress nor indulge our grief. Instead, we should allow ourselves to feel it fully, but also recognize that it is a temporary state. Grief, like all emotions, will pass with time, and it is through this understanding that we can begin to heal. One of the key teachings of Stoicism is the concept of memento mori, remembering that we are mortal and that death is a natural part of life. By contemplating our own mortality and the mortality of those we love, we can prepare ourselves for the inevitability of loss. This is not to be morbid or fatalistic, but rather to cultivate a deeper appreciation for life and for the time we have with those we love. When we accept the reality of loss, we can approach it with a sense of equanimity. We recognize that loss is not a punishment or a tragedy, but a natural part of the human experience. We learn to cherish the moments we have, knowing that they are fleeting, and to let go when the time comes. The Stoics also taught that while we cannot control the fact of loss, we can control how we respond to it. We have the power to choose our attitude, to find meaning in our suffering, and to continue living with purpose even in the face of loss. This is the essence of Stoic resilience, the ability to endure hardship without losing our sense of self or our commitment to our values. In accepting loss, we also learn to appreciate the gifts that remain. Loss can open our eyes to the beauty and fragility of life, reminding us to live fully and to love deeply. It can teach us to be more compassionate, more present, and more grateful for the people and experiences that enrich our lives. Grief, in the Stoic view, is not something to be avoided or feared. It is a natural part of the human experience, and it has the power to transform us if we allow it. Through grief, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. We can find a sense of peace in knowing that loss is not an end, but a transition, a part of the ever-changing flow of life. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of community and connection in times of loss. Grief can be isolating, but it is through sharing our pain with others that we find comfort and support. The Stoics believed that we are all interconnected and that our shared experiences of loss and grief can bring us closer together. In accepting loss and grief, we do not deny the pain or try to escape it. Instead, we embrace it as a natural and necessary part of life. We allow ourselves to feel, to mourn, and to heal. And in doing so, we discover a deeper sense of resilience, wisdom, and peace. Through the Stoic practice of acceptance, we learn that loss is not something to be feared, but something to be understood and embraced. We find the strength to move forward, to honor the memories of what we have lost, and to continue living with a sense of purpose and meaning. Chapter 6. Letting go of past mistakes. And number 6. The weight of past mistakes can be a heavy burden to carry. We often find ourselves replaying old failures, regrets, and missed opportunities in our minds, wishing we could turn back time and make different choices. But the Stoics, with their profound understanding of human nature, taught that true freedom comes from letting go of past mistakes and embracing the present moment. The Stoics believed that the past is beyond our control. No matter how much we dwell on it, we cannot change what has already happened. What we can change, however, is our attitude toward the past. We can choose to let go of our mistakes, to forgive ourselves, and to learn from our experiences. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This wisdom applies not only to external events, but also to our own actions. When we make mistakes, it is our response to those mistakes that determines our growth and our peace of mind. Letting go of past mistakes does not mean ignoring them or pretending they never happened. Instead, it means accepting them as part of our journey and recognizing that they do not define us. Our mistakes are valuable teachers, offering us insights into our weaknesses, our desires, and our humanity. By reflecting on our mistakes without judgment, we can extract the lessons they offer and use them to become wiser and more resilient. One of the core practices of Stoicism is the daily reflection on one's actions. At the end of each day, the Stoics would review their thoughts, words, and deeds, asking themselves what they did well, what they could have done better, and what they learned. This practice was not about self-criticism, but about self-improvement. It was a way of acknowledging mistakes, learning from them, and then letting them go. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often reminded himself that the past and future are beyond his control. He understood that the only time we truly have is the present moment, and that clinging to past mistakes only distracts us from living fully in the now. By letting go of the past, we free ourselves to focus on what we can do in the present to live a virtuous and meaningful life. Forgiving ourselves for past mistakes is an essential part of this process. We are all imperfect beings, and making mistakes is an inevitable part of the human experience. The Stoics taught that we should not be harsh with ourselves, but rather approach our own failings with the same compassion and understanding that we would offer to a friend. In forgiving ourselves, We acknowledge that we did the best we could with the knowledge and resources we had at the time. We recognize that our mistakes do not diminish our worth or our potential. Instead, they are opportunities for growth and self-discovery. The Stoics also emphasize the importance of focusing on what we can control. Our past actions are beyond our control, but our present actions are not. By redirecting our energy away from regret and toward positive action, we can create a better future for ourselves and others. We can choose to live in accordance with our values, to make amends where possible, and to strive to be better each day. Letting go of past mistakes is not an easy task. It requires courage, self-compassion, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. But when we succeed, we experience a profound sense of liberation. We are no longer held back by the chains of regret or defined by our past failures. We are free to create a new path, guided by the wisdom we have gained. In the end, the Stoic approach to past mistakes is one of acceptance and transformation. We accept our mistakes as part of our journey, and we use them to grow and evolve. We let go of the past, not with indifference, but with a sense of purpose and hope for the future. As we practice letting go of past mistakes, we cultivate a mindset of resilience and self-compassion. We learn to trust ourselves, to forgive ourselves, and to move forward with clarity and confidence. In this way, we align ourselves with the Stoic ideal of living in harmony with nature and embracing the present moment as the only time we truly have. Number 7. Forgiveness is a powerful act both for the one who forgives and the one who is forgiven. It is an act that transcends anger, resentment, and the desire for retribution. Yet, forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many see it as a sign of weakness or a concession, but the Stoics saw forgiveness as an expression of strength, wisdom, and inner freedom. To forgive is not to condone or excuse the harm that has been done. It is not about forgetting the past or pretending that the pain never existed. Instead, forgiveness is about releasing ourselves from the grip of resentment and bitterness. It is about choosing to let go of the heavy burden that comes with holding on to anger and hatred. The Stoics understood that when we refuse to forgive, we are the ones who suffer. Resentment and anger are like chains that bind us, trapping us in a cycle of negativity and pain. These emotions can consume our thoughts, drain our energy, and prevent us from living fully in the present moment. By holding on to grudges, we allow the past to control us, to dictate our actions, and to poison our hearts. Forgiveness in the Stoic sense is an act of liberation. It is the recognition that we have the power to choose our response to the actions of others. We can choose to let go of the anger, to release the bitterness, and to free ourselves from the prison of resentment. This is not about the other person. It is about our own peace of mind and well-being. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This teaching reflects the Stoic belief that we should not allow the actions of others to dictate our behavior. When we choose to forgive, we rise above the wrongdoing. We refuse to be defined by the harm that has been done to us. Instead, we define ourselves by our ability to respond with wisdom, compassion, and strength. Forgiveness also involves a deep understanding of human nature. The Stoics believed that all people are flawed, that we all make mistakes, and that we all act out of ignorance at times. When we recognize this shared humanity, we can approach others with empathy and compassion. We can see that those who wrong us are often driven by their own pain, confusion, or lack of understanding. This perspective allows us to forgive more easily, knowing that we too are imperfect and in need of forgiveness. In forgiving others, we also forgive ourselves. The act of forgiveness is a mirror. It reflects our own need for compassion and understanding. When we hold on to anger and resentment, we are often punishing ourselves as much as we are punishing the other person. By forgiving, we release ourselves from this self-inflicted suffering and open the door to healing and reconciliation. Forgiveness is not a one-time act. It is a practice, a way of being. It requires patience, courage, and a commitment to inner peace. The Stoics taught that we should cultivate forgiveness as a daily practice, reflecting on our interactions with others and seeking to let go of any lingering resentment. This practice helps us to maintain a clear mind and a peaceful heart, free from the corrosive effects of anger. It is important to note that forgiveness does not mean that we must reconcile with those who have wronged us, or that we should allow harmful behavior to continue. Forgiveness is an internal process, a decision to let go of our emotional attachment to the wrongdoing. It is possible to forgive someone while still setting boundaries, protecting ourselves, and seeking justice where necessary. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Forgiveness is an act of kindness, both to ourselves and to others. It is an acknowledgement of our shared humanity and a commitment to living in harmony with others. Through forgiveness, we create space for healing, for growth, and for the possibility of a better future. In the end, forgiveness is about freedom, the freedom to live without the weight of anger and bitterness, the freedom to choose our own path, and the freedom to be at peace with ourselves and the world. The Stoics knew that forgiveness is not always easy, but they also knew that it is essential for living a virtuous and fulfilling life. As we practice forgiveness, we cultivate a sense of inner calm and resilience. We learn to respond to the challenges of life with grace and wisdom, and we discover the profound peace that comes from letting go of the past and embracing the present. In this way, we align ourselves with the Stoic ideal of living in accordance with nature, free from the chains of resentment and open to the possibility of true happiness. Number 8. Fear is a natural and instinctive response to the unknown. It is the mind's way of protecting us from potential danger, guiding us to tread carefully when faced with uncertainty. Yet when fear becomes overwhelming, it can paralyze us, holding us back from living fully and embracing the opportunities that life presents. The Stoics, with their profound wisdom, taught us how to release the fear of the unknown and to navigate uncertainty with courage and equanimity. The fear of the unknown often stems from our desire for control. We crave certainty, predictability, and stability in our lives. When faced with situations where the outcome is uncertain, we may feel anxious, stressed, or even terrified. But the Stoics understood that the future is inherently uncertain and that much of what happens in life is beyond our control. They taught us that instead of fearing the unknown, we should embrace it as an essential part of the human experience. One of the fundamental principles of Stoic philosophy is the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. The Stoics believed that we should focus our energy on what we can influence, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, and accept with serenity what we cannot. This acceptance of the limits of our control is the key to releasing the fear of the unknown. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words remind us that while we cannot control the outcome of events, we can control how we respond to them. By focusing on our own thoughts and actions, we can navigate uncertainty with a sense of purpose and calm. The fear of the unknown is often fueled by our imagination. We conjure up worst-case scenarios, anticipating dangers that may never materialize. The Stoics recognized this tendency and advised against letting our minds be dominated by such fearful thoughts. Instead, they encouraged us to approach the unknown with a rational mind, considering the facts and possibilities without allowing fear to distort our perception. One powerful Stoic practice for releasing the fear of the unknown is the technique of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This practice involves contemplating the worst possible outcomes of a situation and preparing ourselves mentally for them. By imagining and accepting the possibility of adverse outcomes, we reduce their power to instill fear in us. When we have already faced our fears in our minds, we become more resilient and better equipped to handle whatever comes our way. However, premeditatio malorum is not about dwelling on negative thoughts or expecting the worst. It is about developing a realistic understanding of what could happen and finding the inner strength to face it. This practice helps us to confront our fears head-on, to diminish their intensity, and to cultivate a sense of calm in the face of uncertainty. Another Stoic practice for releasing the fear of the unknown is to live in the present moment. The Stoics believed that much of our anxiety about the future arises from our failure to stay grounded in the present. We project ourselves into the future, imagining all the things that could go wrong, and in doing so, we miss the opportunities and joys of the present moment. By focusing on the here and now, we free ourselves from the tyranny of fear. We recognize that the future is not yet written, and that our best chance of influencing it lies in what we do today. By living fully in the present, we build the foundation for a future that is shaped by our values, our actions, and our wisdom. The Stoics also taught that fear is often a product of our attachment to outcomes. We fear the unknown because we are attached to a specific result, a particular way of life, or a certain idea of how things should be. But when we learn to let go of these attachments, we free ourselves from the fear that comes with them. We open ourselves to the possibility that life may unfold in ways we cannot predict or control, and that this is not something to fear but something to embrace. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wrote, "He who is brave is free." These words capture the essence of Stoic courage, the freedom that comes from facing the unknown with an open heart and a clear mind. When we release the fear of the unknown, we liberate ourselves to explore, to grow, and to experience life in all its richness and variety. In the end, the Stoic approach to the unknown is one of acceptance, courage, and trust. We accept that life is full of uncertainties and that we cannot control everything that happens to us, but we also trust in our own ability to navigate these uncertainties, to make wise decisions, and to remain true to our values. In doing so, we find the strength to face the unknown not with fear, but with a sense of adventure and a deep appreciation for the mysteries of life. As we practice releasing the fear of the unknown, we cultivate a mindset of resilience and openness. We learn to embrace uncertainty as an integral part of the human experience, and we discover the profound peace that comes from letting go of our need for control. In this way, we align ourselves with the Stoic ideal of living in harmony with nature, trusting in the flow of life, and embracing the unknown with courage and grace. Chapter 9. In a world that often equates success with wealth and happiness with material possessions, the idea of detachment from material goods can seem counterintuitive. Yet, the Stoics, with their profound understanding of the human condition, taught that true contentment comes not from accumulating things, but from freeing ourselves from the attachment to them. Material possessions, in and of themselves, are not inherently bad. They can provide comfort, convenience, and even joy. However, the Stoics believed that when we become too attached to these things, we risk losing our inner peace. This attachment can lead to anxiety, greed, and a never-ending pursuit of more, often at the expense of our well-being and values. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." This wisdom reflects the Stoic understanding that wealth is not measured by what we have, but by our contentment with what we have. When we are constantly yearning for more money, more possessions, more status, we are in a sense enslaved by our desires. True freedom, according to the Stoics, comes from mastering our desires, not from fulfilling them. Detachment from material possessions does not mean renouncing all worldly goods or living in poverty. Rather, it is about cultivating a mindset of contentment and understanding the true nature of wealth. The Stoics taught that we should view material possessions as indifferent, neither inherently good nor bad, but something that can be used wisely or unwisely. Our happiness should not depend on external things, but on our internal state of mind. One of the core practices in Stoicism is the exercise of voluntary discomfort. This involves periodically depriving ourselves of certain comforts or luxuries to remind ourselves that we do not truly need them to be happy. By practicing voluntary discomfort, we train our minds to be resilient in the face of loss and to appreciate what we have without becoming overly attached to it. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, often reminded himself of the impermanence of material things. He wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." This practice of contemplating the transience of life and possessions helps us to see that clinging to material things is futile. Everything we own is temporary, and in the end, it is our character, our virtues, and our relationships that truly matter. The Stoics also believed that our attachment to material possessions often stems from a deeper insecurity or fear. Fear of loss, fear of not having enough, or fear of being judged by others. By addressing these fears and understanding their roots, we can begin to let go of our dependence on material things. We can cultivate a sense of inner security that is not reliant on external wealth or possessions. Detachment from material possessions also allows us to live more ethically and in alignment with our values. When we are not driven by the pursuit of wealth or status, we can focus on what truly matters, living a life of virtue, contributing to the well-being of others, and finding fulfillment in non-material pursuits. The Stoics believed that a virtuous life is the only path to true happiness, and that this happiness is not contingent on our material circumstances. Epictetus, another great Stoic philosopher, taught that we should view material possessions as something to be used, not something to be owned. He said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This perspective encourages us to simplify our lives, to reduce our desires, and to find contentment in what we have, rather than constantly striving for more. By detaching from material possessions, we also free ourselves from the stress and anxiety that often accompany the pursuit of wealth. We no longer need to worry about losing what we have or about keeping up with others. Instead, we can focus on what truly brings us joy and fulfillment: our relationships, our personal growth, and our contribution to the greater good. The Stoic approach to material possessions is one of moderation and mindfulness. It is about finding a balance between enjoying the comforts of life and not becoming enslaved by them. It is about recognizing that our true worth is not determined by what we own, but by who we are and how we live our lives. In the end, detaching from material possessions is about finding freedom. Freedom from the endless cycle of desire, freedom from the fear of loss, and freedom to live a life that is true to our values. The Stoics knew that when we let go of our attachment to things, we gain something far more valuable: a sense of inner peace, contentment, and the ability to live a life of purpose and virtue. As we practice detachment from material possessions, we cultivate a mindset of simplicity and gratitude. We learn to appreciate what we have without being controlled by it, and we discover the profound happiness that comes from living a life that is rich in meaning rather than in things. In this way, we align ourselves with the Stoic ideal of living in harmony with nature, free from the chains of materialism and open to the true wealth of a life well lived. Chapter 10. Life is a constant flow of change. Seasons come and go, relationships evolve, and the world around us is in perpetual motion. Yet despite this universal truth, many of us resist change, clinging to what is familiar and fearing the loss of what we hold dear. The Stoics, with their deep understanding of the nature of existence, taught us the importance of embracing impermanence as a fundamental aspect of life. Impermanence is the essence of all things. Nothing in life is permanent. Our possessions, our achievements, our relationships, and even our very lives are all transient. The Stoics believed that by accepting this truth we can free ourselves from much of the suffering that arises from attachment and fear. When we embrace impermanence, we align ourselves with the natural order of the universe, finding peace in the knowledge that change is inevitable and often beyond our control. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, frequently meditated on the fleeting nature of life. He wrote, "Observe how all things are continually being born of change. The motion of the elements, the decay and dissolution of bodies, the growth of plants and animals. It is the nature of all things to change, to pass away and to cease to be." These words remind us that impermanence is not something to be feared, but something to be understood and accepted as part of the cycle of life. The fear of impermanence often stems from our attachment to people, things, and experiences. We fear losing what we love, and so we try to hold on tightly, resisting the natural flow of change. But the Stoics taught that this resistance only leads to suffering. When we accept that everything is temporary, we can begin to appreciate the present moment more fully, without the anxiety of trying to make it last forever. One of the key practices in Stoic philosophy is the contemplation of death, known as memento mori. This practice involves regularly reflecting on the fact that our lives and the lives of those we love will one day come to an end. While this may seem morbid, the Stoics believed that it is actually a powerful tool for living a more meaningful life. By keeping the reality of death in mind, we are reminded to live each day with intention, to value our time, and to not take anything for granted. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. This perspective encourages us to live with a sense of urgency, to make the most of every moment, and to let go of the illusion of permanence. Embracing impermanence also means accepting the loss and change that comes with it. Whether it is the end of a relationship, the loss of a loved one, or the passing of an era in our lives, these experiences can be difficult and painful. However, the Stoics believed that by accepting impermanence, we can find strength and resilience in the face of loss. We can grieve without being consumed by our grief, and we can honor the memories of what was while still moving forward with our lives. The Stoic approach to impermanence is not one of indifference or detachment, but of deep appreciation for the present moment. When we understand that everything we experience is fleeting, we learn to savor each moment, to be fully present with the people we love, and to find joy in the simple pleasures of life. This mindfulness allows us to live more fully and to connect more deeply with the world around us. The Stoics also taught that impermanence is a source of creativity and renewal. Change is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced as an opportunity for growth and transformation. Just as nature is constantly evolving, so too are we. When we embrace impermanence, we open ourselves to new possibilities, new experiences, and new ways of being. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, said, "Remember that you are an actor in a play, of such a kind as the author may choose. If it is short, then it is short. If long, then long. If the author wishes you to enact a poor man, a cripple, a ruler, or a private citizen, see that you act it well." These words remind us that our lives are part of a larger narrative, one that is shaped by forces beyond our control. By embracing impermanence, we accept our role in this ever-changing play, and we strive to live it with grace and integrity. In the end, embracing impermanence is about finding peace in the flow of life. It is about accepting that change is the only constant, and that everything we experience is part of a larger, ever-evolving process. The Stoics knew that when we let go of our attachment to permanence, we discover a profound sense of freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from suffering, and freedom to live fully in the present moment. As we practice embracing impermanence, we cultivate a mindset of acceptance and resilience. We learn to appreciate the beauty of life's fleeting moments, to find joy in the midst of change, and to live each day with a sense of purpose and gratitude. In this way, we align ourselves with the Stoic ideal of living in harmony with nature, accepting the impermanence of all things, and embracing the journey of life with courage and wisdom.